Edmond Dantes is a fine young sailor, 19 years old, aboard the Pharaon. Their captain died on the voyage, and so Dantes stepped in to serve, including skillfully docking the ship in the harbor at Marseille. He is glad to be home because he's about to marry his beautiful fiancée, Mercedes Herrera. The Pharaon is owned by Monsieur Morel, a good man who encourages the official promotion of Dantes to captain. But others are envious of Dantes's abilities and desirous of what he has, and are determined to ruin him. Dantes is carrying a letter which the Pharaon picked up on the Isle of Elba, the island where Napoleon Bonaparte is exiled. Dantes says that it was the captain's dying wish that the letter be delivered to a man in Paris named Noirtier, who is a Bonapartist, someone who supports Napoleon instead of the king. But Noirtier's son, Monsieur de Villefort, gets the letter first. As a prosecuting attorney, Villefort is a powerful man and knows that his father would be imprisoned by the royalists for receiving such a letter. Villefort is determined to make both the letter and Dantes disappear. Dantes has gathered with the crew of the Pharaon in a tavern to celebrate being named her captain. But before the announcement can be made, Dantes is arrested. Villefort charges him with treason for possessing a letter from a Bonapartist and orders him to be confined to the notorious, inescapable prison called Chateau d'If. Dantes is locked into a tiny dungeon cell. While he is there, his friend, Monsieur Morel, tries to get him out of prison at great risk to himself. Napoleon is defeated at Waterloo. King Louis returns to the throne, and Dantes's fiancée, Mercedes, is heartbroken. But Dantes knows nothing of the world outside. He's just trying to stay alive and sane. One day, Dantes hears a scratching from the wall. Another prison, an old man named Abbé Faria, is trying to dig out. Abbé soon becomes Dantes's good friend. The two dig for years. Abbé teaches Dantes history, literature, science, and languages, and says he knows of a huge fortune hidden in a cave on a small island called Monte Cristo. When Abbé dies 14 years after Dantes was arrested, Dantes hides himself in Abbé's heavy burial sack and escapes when it's thrown into the sea. He's picked up by a smuggler's ship, and when the ship arrives at Monte Cristo, he actually does find the fabulous treasure Abbé told him about. Now extremely wealthy, Dantes begins calling himself the Count of Monte Cristo. He has two goals: reward those who helped him and take painful vengeance on those who harmed him. He buys his own ship and begins searching out those responsible for putting him in prison. The Count begins learning what happened while he was in Chateau d'If, and finds he was framed by enemies who were envious of his abilities and possessions. The conspiracy was started by Monsieur Danglars, who is the purser on board the Pharaon. Danglars wrote the letter, entirely fake, that Dantes received on the Isle of Elba, and which framed him for treason as a Bonapartist. Danglars has become rich by stealing and embezzling from banks and charities. The second conspirator, the one who actually sent the letter to the Isle of Elba for Dantes to eventually receive, was Fernand Mondego. He was in love with Dantes's fiancée, Mercedes Herrera, and hoped to marry her himself. And eventually, he did. For after Dantes was imprisoned, Mercedes lived with Dantes's aging father and cared for him. But when the father died, she had nowhere to go and had little choice but to marry. Fernand amassed a great fortune out of smuggling, slavery, and other crimes. The third conspirator is Gaspard, who helped write the incriminating letter. He once demanded that Dantes's father immediately pay a debt in full, even though it left the aging man with next to nothing. The final enemy is Monsieur Villefort, whom Dantes now knows had him falsely accused and imprisoned for treason. But now Villefort is Deputy Minister of France, the most powerful law enforcement office in the nation. Villefort is also married and has a daughter, Valentine, a kind and innocent young woman. For Baron Danglars, the Count orders him kidnapped and held until he is forced to spend all the money he stole and is ruined financially. For Fernand Mondego, Mercedes is informed that her husband is actually a traitor and a criminal. She finally leaves him and goes to live peacefully in the home that once belonged to Edmond Dantès' father. When Fernand finds that his wife and son have deserted him, he shoots himself. For Gaspard, who continues to commit robbery and murders for personal gain, and even one night tries to rob the Count's house, the Count reveals his own true identity just as he is killed by an accomplice. The revenge on Villefort is more complex. The Count has learned of a past love affair Villefort had with a woman who later became the Baroness Danglars. When their illegitimate child was born, Villefort told her it was stillborn and took it out to bury it alive. But he was stopped, and the child, Benedetto, survived. Benedetto grew to be a cruel and criminal young man. He destroys Villefort by publicly accusing him of many crimes, including the attempted murder of his own infant son. Yet the Count of Monte Cristo does not simply take cold revenge on his enemies. He rewards those who have been kind and tried to help him. For example, the Count is able to save Monsieur Morel's life and restore his fortune. He presents his home on the island of Monte Cristo to Maximilien Morel, the son of Monsieur Morel, even though Maximilien's beloved is Valentine Villefort, the daughter of the same Villefort who conspired against him. Dantès could have taken revenge on the child of a despised enemy, but instead unselfishly arranges for the happiness of the son of one of his greatest friends. Finished at last with revenge, Edmond Dantès, the Count of Monte Cristo, leaves on a ship in a search for a new life and is never seen again.